She sat alone at her sister's wedding until a single dad transformed her day with a surprising introduction. Emily stared at the twinkling fairy lights draped over the reception hall, feeling like an outsider in a world radiating love and joy. Her sister, the radiant bride, floated around the room, laughter spilling from her lips as she danced with guests. Meanwhile, Emily's heart felt heavy with the weight of her recent breakup. 3 years with Nathan had crumbled, leaving her adrift, especially in the presence of happiness and traditions that felt so critical in her small town. As the toasts began, she forced a smile for the camera, her heart racing with the kind of emotional strain that felt tangible. This wasn't just a celebration, it magnified her insecurities, her perceived shortcomings as a 30-year-old single woman. The laughter around her sliced through her resolve, reminding her of the expectations that seemed to tighten like a noose around her neck. Was she already past the point of being taken seriously? Thoughts swirled in her mind, each more damaging than the last. What was left of her career as a middle school teacher? She poured herself into her work, yet here she was, craving connection even as she surrounded herself with ghosts of what-ifs. Before she could spiral further, a plate of wedding cake was placed in front of her, and a man settled into the chair beside her. "You know, I didn't think I'd end up at a wedding alone. Life's funny that way," he said, his warm smile radiating genuine cheer. Jake, she learned, was a local mechanic and a single dad navigating a rough patch of his own. His laughter echoed, melting her wall of isolation just a little. They exchanged awkward but sincere banter about cake preferences, and for a few stolen moments the tension ebbed, disrupted by lightheartedness amidst the poignant backdrop of her sister's celebration. As they started to dig deeper into their own experiences, Emily felt both admiration and discomfort. Jake opened up about his struggles with family disapproval regarding his past relationships. It mirrored her inner turmoil about her own choices and the societal norms that demanded she fit into a prescribed mold. Their laughter morphed into a shared vulnerability, and for the first time that evening, Emily felt an ember of hope flicker within. Before they could explore it further, laughter erupted from the dance floor, drawing them to watch a group of bridesmaids in an impromptu dance-off. The energy was infectious, and in a moment of spontaneity, Emily decided to join them, her fears holding back just long enough to take a leap. As she swayed to the music, she discovered something she had long neglected within herself. Her movements flowed with the rhythm, reminding her of the joy she once had. She could feel Jake watching, his supportive gaze igniting a confidence that felt bittersweet, wondering why life was often draped in so much complexity and hesitation. Yet, just as things began to feel lighter, the weight of Jake's family obligations lurked in the shadows, reminding Emily of her own unresolved relationships. The bond they forged threatened to be an oasis in their chaotic lives, only to be shadowed by unyielding expectations and responsibilities. As they danced, the connection grew stronger, but a nagging doubt nestled in Emily's gut. Maybe this fleeting joy would slip through her fingers, precisely when she needed it most. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the evening progressed, she felt the undercurrents of their conversation pull in different directions, leaving her anxious. Jake mentioned his kids again, and the revelation hung heavily in the air. Would he be able to step away from the stringent expectations he faced to embrace her? And could she, trapped by her past failures and family dynamics, brave the uncharted territory of a new connection? The dance floor pulsated with energy, but Emily felt herself standing on the edge, caught between the promise of something beautiful and the pressure of a world that threatened to box them both in. Would they push through, or was fate writing another ending for them before they could even begin? The music slowed, and as couples drifted to the edges of the dance floor, Emily found herself standing with Jake,
the laughter fading to a comfortable silence. She studied the warm glow of the fairy lights surrounding them, wishing she could pull the courage from their radiance. What was she afraid of? Not just his children or the prospect of starting anew, but the fear of her capacity to take a leap, to fully embrace the present. Her heart raced, oscillating between fear and an intoxicating anticipation. "How are you feeling?" Jake's voice pulled her from her reverie. His eyes searched hers, and she sensed the invitation there, an opening to let go of the tormented thoughts bound by her past. She hesitated, weighing her words as though laying bare her fears might expose her vulnerable core. Instead, she felt a flicker of rebellion against her self-imposed limitations. "I don't want to just exist anymore. I want to feel alive," she admitted, surprising herself with the clarity of her own desire. Jake's expression shifted to one of understanding, and she was disarmed by the straightforwardness of his response. "We're both trying to navigate our way through a maze of what should be easy. It's tough." His honesty resonated, unraveling a thread of doubt that had held her captive in a cocoon of despair. In that moment, Emily caught
a glimpse of possibility. It wasn't simply about him or the idea of a relationship. It was about reclaiming her sense of self. The dreams of her youth had been shrouded so long that she feared they no longer existed. Could she revive them? Jake had already embarked upon this journey, defying the confines of his past. Perhaps it was her turn. The conversation slowly pivoted from shared burdens to aspirations. They talked about dreams and long-buried ambitions. Jake's laughter returned, not just for her, but igniting a spark within herself. What did she want? It was a question she hadn't dared voice in years. Admitting that she had always wanted to teach beyond the confines of her middle school classroom bubbled to the surface. She shared her long-held aspiration of bringing literature alive for her students, of allowing them to explore their identities through the stories they read. The words flowed freely as Jake listened, and with each revelation, her confidence grew. "Why not expand your sphere?" Jake suggested, leaning forward. "Maybe you can find ways outside of the classroom, workshops or mentorships. The world could use more passionate educators, especially with literature." While the prospect seemed daunting, she felt the familiar impatience of an untamed spirit stir within her. Imagining herself standing in front of a group of eager faces, introducing them to the beauty of words, embraced her. "I've always thought about it, but," she caught herself. "If not now, when?" Jake's hopeful grin bolstered her burgeoning determination against the tide of doubt. As the evening matured, the connection between them deepened, but was tempered by the reality of their situations. With each shared ambition, Emily recognized the fear that lurked at the edges of her aspirations. A fear of failure, of past mistakes echoing loudly in her present. Yet, with Jake's encouragement, she clung tighter to the flicker of hope that began to glow brighter from within her. "I think I need to take a step, whatever that looks like." Emily's heart raced with excitement at the challenge of plunging into the unknown. As they departed from the dance floor, her phone buzzed with an impending message that abruptly pulled her back from her newfound buoyancy. Should she plunge headfirst into this exciting venture or hold back? The moment felt pivotal. She glanced at Jake, who caught her gaze with sincerity. That comfort wavered, the rift of reality between their worlds visible again. The joy of her realizations shadowed the challenge of their respective pasts. Would she be able to redefine her path with his lingering presence, or was this connection destined to remain just a beautiful memory? Before she could contemplate her next steps, another message buzzed, a reminder of the life waiting for her at home. But it wasn't just any message, it was from Nathan, with words promising a confrontation that would test her new resolve. The moment of truth loomed ahead. Would she stand firm in her aspirations, or would she flee back into the familiar confines of her previous life? Emily stood at the edge of the dimly lit room, a battleground of emotions swirling within her. The excitement of her conversation with Jake dulled against the sharpness of Nathan's message. It was a reminder of the life she'd been entrenched in far too long, and all too well. The thought of facing Nathan filled her with dread. Deep down, she felt the weight of every missed opportunity resolve itself into the present moment, urging her towards a definitive choice. Taking a deep breath, she focused on Jake, who offered a reassuring smile. He stepped closer, his presence grounding her. "Looks like you've got a lot on your mind," he noted. His tone was light, yet there was an undeniable sincerity behind his words that made her heart swell. She hesitated again, glimpsing the potential of everything they had discussed. How would it feel to engage in that world she longed to enter? Each thought danced tantalizingly close, only to be snatched away by thoughts of Nathan. Did she dare push forward into the unknown? "I've got to go," she finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper yet heavy with resolve. Jake's brow furrowed as she spoke, but she knew what she had to do. Nathan's beckoning message festered in her mind, a call to confront the past she had been attempting to outrun. As she walked toward the exit, Emily felt the hardening grip of fear. It was a familiar sensation, reminiscent of times when she had chosen avoidance over action. But tonight felt different. Tonight, she was teetering on the edge of a transformative leap. What if confronting Nathan meant facing herself as well? Her car was parked under a flickering streetlight, creating an odd intimacy in the shadow of the night as she sat behind the wheel. The glow from her phone felt almost blinding, and she released a shaky breath as she clutched it tightly. Taking a moment to gather her thoughts, she realized it wasn't just about Nathan anymore. It was about her life, her choices, her empowerment. Resolutely, she tapped on the message. Taking the first step was crucial, but the words elicited dread. One more confrontation with someone who represented all her unacknowledged fears of inadequacy. As she read Nathan's words, she felt a swell of indignation rise within her. He wasn't merely seeking a conversation, he was trying to assert control over a life he believed was still his to dictate. And then it struck her. She had the ability to reclaim her narrative. She could step into her own power, redefine her path, and refuse to be caged by his expectations. With newfound clarity, Emily crafted her response, determined to set boundaries that had eluded her for far too long. The rush of thoughts flowed through her fingers onto the screen, articulating her needs and desires. After all those years of silencing herself, it felt liberating to finally speak her truth. "Let's meet tomorrow," she typed firmly, a momentum building within her. "I need to establish what's next for me." Sending the message solidified her commitment to change. Suddenly, her heart raced again, this time in anticipation rather than fear. The prospect of speaking her truth felt thrilling, even exhilarating. She could envision stepping into that workshop she had long fantasized about, the classroom buzzing with lively discussions as she inspired young minds, reviving her aspiration, breathing life into her dormant dreams. But first, she had to untangle herself from the old. With that thought, a different message crossed her mind. How would Jake react? Would he understand the magnitude of this leap? Would he still stand beside her after facing Nathan? As those thoughts flitted through her mind, she felt a swirling sensation in her stomach. The urgency of her new chapter had ignited synergistic possibilities. Everything in her life was on the cusp of transformation. But her heart suddenly fluttered sharply as realization settled in like an unwelcome guest. She had now opened a window, not just to her aspirations, but the possibility of failure. Would she falter during the confrontation tomorrow? The thought nagged at her, pouring cold water over her fire as she realized this was just the beginning of a long and arduous path. Only time would tell if she would move forward or slip back into the shadows of fear and familiarity. As she put the car in gear and headed home, a sense of anticipation settled in. The real work was about to begin. Not just confronting Nathan, but navigating her newfound ambitions, binding her past with a brighter future. The moon shone brightly above her, illuminating the road ahead, and with a deep breath she steeled herself for what was to come. Would she emerge as the empowered woman she aspired to become, or would she buckle beneath the weight of her past? Tomorrow would reveal all.
The morning light streamed through the curtains, flooding Emily's room with a sense of urgency. Today was the day she would finally confront Nathan. Sleep had been evasive, tangled with worry and anticipation. The drive to reclaim her narrative loomed ahead like a murky fog, waiting to be traversed. In the mirror, she studied her reflection, a woman on the brink of transformation, but still haunted by doubt. She meticulously applied her makeup, each brushstroke acting as a shield against the weight of the past. As she filled in her brows, she whispered affirmations to herself. "You can do this. You're stronger than the shadows." The mere act of repetition fostered a sense of empowerment, solidifying her resolve. With every moment that passed, anxiety coiled tighter in her stomach. She glanced at her phone, half tempted to reach out to Jake for support. Yet she hesitated. This battle was hers alone. She needed to trust in her own strength before seeking validation from others. The confrontation with Nathan represented not just a closure of that chapter, but also an opening to something new, yet uncertain. The cafe selected for their meeting was a quaint spot with exposed brick walls and the rich aroma of
freshly brewed coffee. As she arrived, her heart drummed a chaotic rhythm. She pushed the door open, the bell above jingling mechanically, a sound both intimidating and ordinary. Familiarity dripped from the environment, but she felt like a stranger. She found a secluded table near the window, her favorite spot, allowing her a view of the street outside. As she waited, she replayed their last interaction in her mind, recalling the way Nathan tried to undermine her every ambition. Gritting her teeth in determination, she promised herself that today would differ. Moments later, Nathan entered, his presence filling the space as he spotted her. He approached with his usual confident gait, an air of authority that had always unnerved her. "Emily," he greeted, acknowledging her with a slight nod, as if they were merely acquaintances. She could feel the air shift, an imbalance already forming in the room. "Thanks for meeting me," she replied, summoning a steadiness in her voice. "Let's get straight to it, shall we?" He settled across from her, his gaze piercing. "I'm not here to listen to your soft dreams. I want to know if you'll come back to help with the project next quarter." "Actually, Nathan, I'm here to talk about my future, my worth," she countered, surprising even herself. The words poured out, no longer draped in hesitation, as she felt the weight of the moment hanging in the air between them. Nathan raised an eyebrow, intrigued but dismissive. "You know I'm offering you a stable opportunity. Isn't that what everyone wants?" Realizing the fork in the road, Emily took a moment, considering her response. "What I want is to take control of my choices, not simply follow a script you wrote for me. Your definition of stability is not mine. I want to teach, to create impact, and that includes steering clear from your expectations." The tension thickened, and in that instant, something shifted between them. A glimpse of the dynamic years of their relationship laid bare. His attempts to exert control versus her burgeoning sense of self-empowerment. She could feel her heart race, standing on the precipice of both fear and anticipation. "You think you're capable of that?" Nathan challenged, leaning in closer, his breath laced with condescension. "I know I am," she replied firmly, the conviction reverberating through her. "This isn't just about what you want. It's about what I deserve, the chance to find fulfillment on my own terms." Silence enveloped them, and she could see confusion flicker across Nathan's features. She was readying for the fallout, mentally preparing for the pushback that might follow. The encounter stretched longer, as she deliberately held her ground, abandoning the urge to retreat into her usual submissiveness. This was her moment, to claim what had always been hers, her voice, her choices, her life. As Nathan opened his mouth to respond, she felt adrenaline coursing through her veins like wildfire. Would she emerge victorious today, or risk everything for a fight that threatened to reshape her future yet again? The answer hung in the air, heavy, with consequence, leaving her anxious to uncover the outcome. Would Nathan accept her newfound strength, or would the confrontation escalate into a battle of wills neither had anticipated?
The silence felt suffocating as Nathan stared at her, an expression twisting his features that was part disbelief, part irritation. Emily held her breath, bracing for the verbal barrage she had often experienced. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw a flicker of recognition, a hint that maybe he was beginning to understand just how far she had come. "Emily, you've always been the idealist, but ideals don't pay the bills," he finally said, his tone condescending, yet almost defensive. "What you want is unrealistic. You really think you can change the world with your dreams? You're not ready for that." Each word felt like a gut punch, but she was prepared. The fatigue of derision couldn't suffocate her anymore. "Nathan, it's not just about me," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the air like a sharpened blade. "I refuse to let you define my reality anymore. I refuse to be boxed in. I have ideas worth sharing, and I want to inspire others." His expression shifted to one of bemusement, as if she were a child trying to assert independence in a realm of adult responsibilities. Inspiration doesn't come without sacrifice. You need experience. You need a safety net. Her heart pounded with a mix of defiance and clarity as she responded. "I've sacrificed enough by not chasing my passion out of fear. I could stay in the shadows of your projects, but that would mean losing myself entirely. I'm not asking for your permission. I'm declaring my independence." For the first time, she saw a flash of uncertainty cross Nathan's face. It was a crack in his facade, a glimpse into the vulnerability he had always masked with bravado. She seized the moment, her voice growing bolder. "I've spent years feeling inadequate under your expectations. Even if I falter, I must write my own script." The cafe buzzed around them, oblivious to the storm brewing at one small table, yet it felt as though they were encapsulated in a bubble of raw emotion. Nathan's face hardened, and Emily's gut twisted, knowing that his next words could shift the balance either way. "I don't think you're as brave as you think," he retorted, the challenge igniting something deep within her. Bravery requires more than talk. It demands action and success. Something ignited, a spark of daring uncoiling inside her. "Then let's put it to the test. I'll show you that I can find success in the ways that matter to me, maybe even outside of your world." Nathan leaned back, evaluating her, clearly caught off guard by the argument's shift. "And what if you fail?" The question dangled ominously, but Emily found her footing. "Then I'll get back up and try again. That's part of growth. In that space of failure, I'll learn who I truly am." Silence permeated the space between them, as the undertow of their conversation ran deep. Would Nathan allow her to step into her power, or would he keep her locked within his confines? Just then, the weight of their past loomed larger, wrapping around Emily like a storm cloud. The memories of him underestimating her haunted her, but she realized they had molded her resilience. This confrontation was an inflection point. Either she would cower, or she would rise. Finally, Nathan broke the silence, but rather than exert dominance, he displayed a flicker of curiosity. "So, what's your plan?" The change in his tone fueled her confidence, igniting a thread of possibility. "I'll start a workshop, something to address real issues, mentor young minds. I'll reach out to local schools, communities where I can create opportunities." Plotting her path felt liberating, and the hesitation that had once gripped her loosened its hold. She was already envisioning what could be, a network of inspired individuals, a ripple effect stemming from her own choices. But still, Nathan didn't respond immediately, his face a mask of contemplation. "Emily, I don't think—" She cut him off, emboldened. "I get it. You want me as an extension of your ambitions, but that's not who I am anymore. If you can't accept that, then I'll take this journey on my own." Suddenly, the resolve within her felt like an election, a decision with profound consequences. She was ready to either claim victory or embrace yet another challenge. "What will you do when the world pushes back?" Nathan pressed, his eyes flickering with doubt, but maybe a hint of respect too. With boldness channeling every ounce of her being, she met his gaze fiercely. "I'll make my impact by standing tall and unyielding." As she stated her intentions, the reality of her words began settling in. Today marked more than a confrontation. It was the dawn of her own identity. But as she looked into Nathan's eyes, questioning whether he was a gatekeeper or an ally, a surge of uncertainty wrapped around her. What would she do if he chose to fight back? In that moment, the cafe grew silent, anticipation tangling the air thickly, and Emily found herself questioning not just her abilities, but the very path she stood upon. Would Nathan become a stepping stone towards her dreams, or an obstacle that would compel her to adopt a different approach entirely? The answer loomed, a specter of possibilities, urging her forward into the unknown in search of her real self. The days that followed that intense conversation felt both exhilarating and intimidating. Emily found herself swirling in a vortex of ambition and self-doubt, grappling with the enormity of her decision. The prospect of starting her workshop became a beacon, but with that light came shadows of uncertainty. How would she manifest her vision in a world that often clamped down on ideas that deviate from the norm? Real-life challenges laced her thoughts as she sat at her small kitchen table, sifting through the remnants of her resolve. The echo of Nathan's voice haunted her, reminding her that the weight of practicality often crushed the lightness of dreams. Yet the anger she once felt was slowly giving way to determination. She was done waiting for permission. The entrepreneurial spirit inside her would no longer be muffled. Every day now was a meticulous process of planning. Her first step was to develop a curriculum that was both engaging and impactful. She envisioned a series of workshops, not just focused on academics, but also on emotional intelligence, creative problem-solving, and self-advocacy. Emily could picture it, a room filled with eager faces, hungry for knowledge and ready to challenge their own limitations. There was a rush of empowerment in that thought. As she crafted lesson plans, she felt the adrenaline of creation surge within her. Each module seemed to take on a life of its own, and yearnings of her past experiences began pouring onto the pages. There were moments she wanted to resurrect from silence, her own battles with self-esteem and societal expectations as powerful tools to connect with others. Emily's hands trembled with belief. However, the soothing rhythm of progress would not last long. The first obstacle arrived when she attempted to reach out to schools in her community, an endeavor that involved spreadsheets, emails, and phone calls, an avalanche of rejections that crashed upon her idealism. "We don't have room for extra programming," one principal had conveyed with a practiced insensitivity. Each rejection felt like a nail in her burgeoning confidence. She started doubting her method, her ideas, and the very legitimacy of what she was trying to create. They were all echoes of Nathan's earlier skepticism, reverberating through her mind. She found herself pacing the length of her tiny apartment, wondering if the world truly cared about transformation or was too complacent to engage with new ideas. But it was in one of those restless moments that something inside her snapped back into action. Instead of succumbing to despair, Emily made a choice. She would adapt. The reality was clear. If schools weren't open to her offering, she'd take the initiative elsewhere. She began to brainstorm unconventional locations, community centers, libraries, even parks. The idea of being a gleaner of insight rather than waiting for permission invigorated her spirit. With each passing day, she found herself forming connections with local organizations that were more receptive to her mission. There was a local community center that expressed interest in building its youth program. As she walked through their open spaces for the first time, a surge of excitement pulsed through her. It felt right. This could be her launchpad. She assembled a team of volunteers, like-minded individuals who shared her vision. They transformed her single workshop into a series of interconnected sessions, blending diverse topics that could resonate with various young audiences. Emily's spirits soared as they worked collaboratively, their discussions flowing like a stream, each suggestion adding depth and texture to her original ideas. But as she prepared for the first session, a nagging voice emerged. What if no one showed up? What if
It failed? Battling negativity was exhausting, but she clung to the belief that progress was born in imperfection. As the date approached, she found herself standing at a critical junction, her heart racing with anticipation and dread. She had laid the groundwork, but the outcome remained an uncertainty, poised on the thin edge of possibility. On the night before her first workshop, she called her sister, seeking reassurance. "You've got this, Em. Trust your instincts and remember why you started," her sister advised. Emily felt emboldened, revisiting her list of intentions: to inspire others, to reclaim her own narrative, to turn her dreams into reality. The phone call ended, and Emily took a moment to breathe deeply, closing her eyes against the flood of doubt. Tomorrow would be a culmination of risks and hopes, and the outcome would only be the beginning of a larger journey. As she settled into bed, the weight of what lay ahead was almost unbearable. She couldn't afford to fail, not now. In the silence of that night, after everything she had fought through, she heard an unspoken promise emerge, a commitment to not only learn from her challenges, but to redefine the very fabric of who she was becoming. But would the morning bring triumph or turmoil? As she closed her eyes, the unknown loomed large, a veil of mystery ready to unfold with the dawn. The air was thick with anticipation as Emily stepped into the community center the next morning. The warm sun streamed through the windows, casting a light that made the space feel alive. But despite the inviting atmosphere, her stomach twisted with nerves. Today was her debut. All the planning simmered to a critical point. A clock on the wall ticked ominously, reminding her that time would soon reveal her fate. Would anyone show up? She thought of the countless emails she had sent and the rejections that had peppered her path. The self-doubt she had battled over the last few weeks clawed at her again, whispering insidious fears into her ear. Emily took a moment to breathe against the onslaught of anxiety. Each breath felt like a mantra. She had made promises to herself, to inspire, to challenge, and to unlock potential. There was no room for hesitation now. She straightened her back, squared her shoulders, and began arranging the chairs. As she prepared, she heard light footsteps and turned to see one of her volunteers entering, a bright smile illuminating her face. "I'm so excited," the woman exclaimed, her enthusiasm a welcome contrast to Emily's uncertainty. After hours of solitary doubt, the simple joy from her team member ignited a spark in Emily. What if no one shows up? Emily's voice trembled with the weight of her worries. "They will," her volunteer said, braiding hair back from her face. "You put your heart into this. You're creating something special." The conviction in her voice was infectious. Emily couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Still, as the minutes ticked down, she caught glimpses of empty chairs, each one threatening to swallow her new endeavor whole. When the clock finally struck 3, Emily looked up to see the entrance door swing open. 1, 2, then 3 young faces peered in shyly, scanning the room before hesitantly entering. Relief washed over her. There would be an audience. Yet the number was still far from the crowd she had envisioned. "Hey there," Emily called, her voice threading through the space, buoyed by necessity. "Welcome. I'm Emily, and I'm so glad you're here." As she guided the newcomers to their seats, a sense of transformation pulsed within her. Once filled with doubt, she now felt a flicker of power stemming from a profound truth. What she offered was valuable, even if the numbers were small.
They were there to learn, to grow, and Emily was determined to facilitate that journey. The workshop unfolded in unexpected ways. As they delved into discussions on self-advocacy, Emily began to see not just her vision manifesting, but also the potential sparking in her attendees. Their questions were illuminating, their thoughts engaging. Each exchange fortified her confidence. But the final challenge came toward the session's conclusion. Emily asked, "What are your biggest challenges in speaking up for yourself?" The young participants hesitated, glancing at each other as silence enveloped the room. The weight of her expectations crashed down, and doubt flickered in again. Maybe they wouldn't share. Maybe her efforts were in vain. Just when she thought the moment might shatter her newfound resolve, a voice spoke up. A timid but determined young girl in the front row. "I always feel too shy to express what I want." Emily's heart raced. It was a vital moment. Here was a chance for connection. "Thank you for sharing that," she replied, her tone sincere. "Let's talk about why it's so important to express ourselves. Your voice matters." As the conversation flowed and more hands shot up, Emily felt a shift in herself. The young girl opened a door that had the potential to reshape the entire workshop, confronting fear with bravery. It was proof that Emily's desire to connect and inspire was resonating, and her self-worth blossomed in tandem. Yet, it wasn't just the affirmations of success that elevated Emily's spirit. It was the realization that her journey was just beginning. The workshop had indeed unveiled something unexpected in her, an innate capability to lead, to mend disconnection through shared experience. With the day winding down, Emily thought of Nathan and the dots he had sown. She was forging something entirely her own, unfurling roots in this emotional landscape. But the thrills of success faded into a contemplative fog when she received a text a few minutes after the session. It was from the community center director, relaying news from a school that had reached out. They were interested in partnering for more workshops, asking for a detailed proposal. A storm of new possibilities brewed within her as she read the words over and over. The future beckoned with uncertain eagerness, but Emily?
A surge of readiness to meet it head-on. With each challenge she overcame, she was not just building a workshop, she was constructing a resilient version of herself. Where would this new path lead? With the faint pulse of anxiety lurking in the background, she couldn't help but wonder what awaited her in these uncharted territories of influence and leadership. Emily sat at her desk the following morning, her laptop humming quietly in front of her, yet each keystroke felt like a monumental effort. She replayed the workshop in her mind, analyzing every moment, every pause, every word she had spoken. She had caught a glimpse of what she could become, yet a dull ache of uncertainty still resided within her. The response from the school had been fleetingly exhilarating, but now it coiled into a tight knot in her stomach. They needed a proposal, one that had to be both persuasive and professional. How could she craft something worthy of their interest? Did she even know enough to offer something impactful? Those self-doubts crept back in, swirling like a storm within her. Instead of typing, she found herself staring out the window, watching the leaves shimmy gently in the wind. Nature had a way of recalibrating her thoughts. She had proven she could channel her passion into action, but how could she expand that vision? The current venture felt like a puddle rather than a river, yet she longed to flow, to stretch beyond these modest beginnings. With a sigh, Emily forced herself to focus, casting her eyes to the blank document. She had a few ideas already: interactive sessions, perhaps a mentorship aspect that connected the participants with local leaders. Each idea swelled her heart with excitement, yet each glamour faded upon examination, doubt gnawing at her resolve. Who was she to propose such things? No, that line of thinking had to stop. Emily straightened, pushed her hair back, and pulled up a blank page. She would set aside the fears and lean into her discovery.
After all, the voice of that shy girl had revealed a need, no, a hunger for exactly what she was offering. The proposal needed her authentic input, her raw experiences, and passionate ideas. She could create value because she had seen the spark in those young faces. Minutes turned into hours as she crafted and reshaped her proposal. The words flowed, buoyed by a newfound conviction. Her lived experiences spilled into her writing. She articulated the struggles of communication that echoed her journey with clarity and authenticity. Everything she wanted to offer felt valid, validated by the very reason she had started this, to kindle the voices of others, just as she had found her own. As she revisited each section, her insecurities began to recede, a tapestry of confidence woven through. This felt right, necessary even. She opened a new document for potential partners, emphasizing the transformative experiences and growth she hoped to foster. The sense of purpose solidified within her, building a resilience against any past doubts. Yet as she
hit the save button, a thunderous knock at her door interrupted her flow. It was Lucy, one of her volunteers, bouncing on her heels with excitement. "I just heard from another school," she exclaimed. "They want us to run a series of workshops, too." The news sent a jolt through Emily. This was momentum. This was validation. "Can you believe it?" Lucy continued, bubbling over. "You've struck a chord with the community. They need your voice." But before Emily could fully absorb the exhilarating moment, another shadow crossed her mental landscape: Nathan's voice. It sliced through her excitement like a knife. The doubt he had instilled still lingered, whispering that this wouldn't last, that it was all just a fluke. "Are you all right?" Lucy asked, noticing the flicker of apprehension in Emily's eyes. What if this is just a temporary interest? I mean, what if I can't deliver?" The thoughts spilled out, vulnerable and unrefined. "Then we'll learn, but don't doubt what you've already accomplished. You're growing into this role." Lucy's reassurance sparked a new possibility in Emily, peeling back the layers of her anxiety. But Nathan's skepticism still loomed, forcing Emily into a familiar corner of doubt. Yet here resided the crux of her evolution. It wasn't just about participation, it was about her resilience in the face of that doubt. As the conversation with Lucy faded into the background, Emily was left with a new awareness. These were not just opportunities to share her voice, but challenges that would demand her growth. With decisions ahead that would test her values and her resolve, she felt the familiar pulse of uncertainty, but it was overshadowed now by a burgeoning determination to confront it. She turned to her laptop once more. With the schools pursuing her work, what would she do next? The dawning realization washed over her. She was on the brink of something more substantial than she had ever anticipated, something that asked for everything she had. What would she choose to become in this uncharted journey of leadership? Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her mind racing with possibilities. This was no longer merely about crafting a proposal. It was about stepping into a role that demanded authenticity and courage. With the pressure of expectations mounting, she took a deep breath and began to map out a strategic plan, aware that every detail could either nurture her momentum or unravel it. She envisioned multi-tiered workshops, each building upon the last. A core module on communication skills rooted in self-expression would form the foundation. Then interactive exercises to engage participants, followed by opportunities for personal reflection and mentorship that would breathe life into their voices. She found herself smiling as ideas cascaded across the screen, invigorated by the realization that she was not alone. The spark ignited by the students lingered within her, a reminder of the potential within every silence. As she typed, doubts crept back in, uninvited but familiar. Would they see her ideas as merely an echo of what had been? Proposed elsewhere? What if she faltered under the weight of these expectations? The shadows of Nathan's doubts loomed like clouds over her sunlit thoughts. It was a reality she had long grappled with, But now it felt different. Perhaps this time she would respond not with fear, but with determination. The clock ticked in the background, every second stretching her anticipation. She glanced at her phone, scrolling through messages that buzzed without urgency. Emily was supposed to meet with her mentor, a firm woman who had navigated these waters with conviction. Yet, as she considered her doubts, she momentarily hesitated. It was tempting to delay, to hide behind the screen rather than confront the questions that needed answering. By pushing her chair back and standing up, Emily made a choice. She needed to embrace the discomfort, to bring forth the uncertainties that had kept her at bay. A meeting would require vulnerability, a chance to expose her ambitions for scrutiny. Committed to her development, she called her mentor, gathering the courage to articulate her vision. "Hi, Marissa, it's Emily. I'd love to meet sooner if possible," she said, her voice steadied by her resolve. "Of course. How about this afternoon?" Marissa replied, sensing the urgency in Emily's tone. Each passing hour felt like an eternity filled with anticipation. The moment arrived with a familiar flutter in her stomach as she approached Marissa, who awaited her in a cozy cafe with expansive windows that let in fierce autumn light. Emily settled into the conversation, navigating the intricate web of her ideas and fears, gauging Marissa's reactions as she shared her vision. "What's crucial is aligning your goals with what you're passionate about," Marissa advised, her eyes shining with encouragement. "This proposal isn't just a document, it's a reflection of who you are. Let that authenticity flow. Show them the Emily we know." The affirmation sharpened Emily's focus. They delved into specifics, presentation styles, audience engagement, potential partnerships. Each suggestion ignited sparkles of creativity that Emily hadn't believed lived in her. She began jotting down ideas that unfurled in her mind, her grip on the keyboard tightening with clarity. Yet at the back of her mind, Nathan's doubts lurked. As a mentor, Marissa challenged her to confront those ingrained insecurities head-on. "What if you take 2 minutes during your workshop to open a dialogue about vulnerability? Let them see you're just as human," she prompted, winking. The proposition unsettled Emily. Would it be too raw? But perhaps it could be the true connection she was seeking. She realized that exposing her journey could inspire others to find their voices. Each revelation felt like a stepping stone toward a growing desire to lead authentically. As their meeting concluded, Emily left lighter, empowered by this newfound understanding. Her proposal didn't need to be perfect, it just had to be real. The idea of owning her story, past mistakes, current aspirations, and all, captured her heart. "Come Monday, I'll present this proposal," she whispered to herself, her spirit buoyed. But as she stepped outside, a new wave of anxiety washed over her. The thought of standing before the school, laying bare her journey, filled her with dread and excitement. She had committed to face an audience that might not understand, might not embrace, or worse, might mirror Nathan's doubt. That uncertainty loomed heavy as she forged her way home, igniting a new internal battle between fear and possibility. What if everything she feared would unveil a path she never imagined? The thought hung in the air, taunting her with its complexity. She was at the edge of a choice. Would she embrace her narrative and pave the way for others, or would she shrink back into conformity out of fear? As Monday dawned, Emily felt the weight of both anticipation and apprehension pressing against her ribs. Today was not simply another day. It was an apex, a culmination of the fears she had faced, the confidence she had steadily cultivated, and the dreams she had long buried. But now they had risen again, demanding their place in the world. Arriving at the school felt surreal. The familiar halls echoed with the sounds of laughter and chatter, but instead they wove an intricate tapestry of hope and trepidation in her heart. She walked toward the auditorium, each step resonating with nervous energy. It was there, standing at the threshold, that she could hear the buzz of conversations, discussions steeped in youthfulness and the eagerness to learn.
Once on stage, the spotlight illuminated her like a beacon, casting away the shadows of doubt that had haunted her. Emily took a deep breath, grounding herself. What she was about to offer was not just a workshop. It was an invitation for every young mind there to join her in a journey of discovery, exploring self-advocacy, creativity, and the importance of voice. "Hi everyone, I'm Emily," she began, feeling a surge of warmth as she scanned the crowd. "Today, we're not just here to talk, we're here to connect." The smiles reflected back at her invigorated her spirit. As she launched into the first module, she spoke with authenticity, embracing vulnerability. The narrative she weaved included her own fears, failures, and triumphs. By sharing her insecurities, she dismantled barriers between herself and her audience, transforming the sterile environment into a shared space of courage. As the workshop unfolded, she felt the synergy between her and the participants blossom. The once abstract ideas of communication became palpable as participants engaged in dialogues about their own experiences and challenges. The vulnerability she had initially feared became an asset. Each question answered, each voice lifted, solidified Emily's sense of purpose. The doubts that lingered quietly dissipated. She realized that her journey truly resonated with them. They were grappling with their own versions of isolation and yearning for connection. After the final exercise, a shy young man approached. "Thank you," he said earnestly, his eyes alive with a newfound light. "I didn't think I could stand up and say what I wanted, but you made it feel okay." At that moment, the
pillars of her insecurities crumbled under the weight of something far more substantial: validation. The emotional tremor that pulsed through her was evidence that she could influence lives, that her aspirations and dreams could materialize in impactful ways. After the school district's representatives applauded her proposals with enthusiasm, Emily felt a sense of triumph envelop her. They wanted not just one workshop, but were eager to collaborate further. The feedback they offered solidified her role. "You have an extraordinary voice, Emily," the principal remarked. It was in that acknowledgement that she felt the ramifications of her growth reverberate throughout her being. By the end of the day, her heart brimmed with fulfillment. It pulsed confidently through her veins. As she reflected on the afternoon, Emily recognized how far she had journeyed since that fateful wedding with Jake, how she had woven her vulnerabilities into strength and turned obstacles into opportunities. Just as she was closing her laptop that evening, a message from Jake lit up her phone screen. "Hey, I heard about your success today. Proud of you. Let's celebrate soon?" The words tingled with support and shared joy. Her heart swelled as she contemplated the prospects of not only blossoming professionally, but personally, forging new connections without the entanglements of past expectations. Her journey had begun as one of fear, but had transformed into one of empowerment. Emily had not just survived in a world of conformity, she had conquered it, evolving confidently into a remarkable educator and an advocate for those whose voices were often overlooked. Tonight, as she prepared for the next chapter, both in her personal and professional life, she realized she was firmly in the driver's seat of her narrative. She had acknowledged her past, embraced her power, and laid the foundations of something profoundly impactful. The future beckoned with optimism, and Emily felt truly alive, ready to reach for her dreams without reservation. The moment had come to put herself first, to secure her place not just as a teacher, but as a visionary mentor who could spark change. This was not merely a resolution. It was an affirmation of her identity, marked by purpose and unwavering determination. Transform your life with every choice you make. Join Emily on this journey of empowerment, growth, and authentic living. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss more transformative stories that can inspire your own path. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let others be motivated by these powerful narratives. Comments are open. Share your thoughts on Emily's journey and how you've conquered your own challenges. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is crucial, and together we can create a wave of change.